It's Divas That Care Radio. Stories, strategies, and ideas to inspire positive change. Welcome to Divas That Care, a network of women committed to making our world a better place for everyone. This is a global movement for women, by women, engaged in a collaborative effort to create a better world for future generations. To find out more about the movement, visit divasthatcare.com after the show. Right now, though, stay tuned for another jolt of inspiration.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Divas That Care. I'm Candace Gish. Well, we're excited. I'm going to be introducing a brand new diva to our family. You know, that's what 2021 has all been about, is just really introducing brand new, amazing, inspirational women to our program that are doing extraordinary things. Today's guest, she's going to blow you away, the things that she is doing, and I can't wait to get to know her. But for any of you that have just tuned in for the very first time, thank you so much. The Divas That Care has been going now for 11 years. We're going into our 11th year. We've gone through a variety of different changes, and we have so many different amazing hosts on the Divas That Care network, and you don't want to miss their program. So make sure you check them all out at divasthatcare.com. All right, let's get started, everyone. Today's guest is Brianna Coombs. And Brianna, I am so excited to be introducing you into our program because you have so many great things to share with all of our listeners.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so honored that you have allowed me to be a guest on your show today.
Well, I'm excited. And at the end of the program, we're going to kind of share with our listener space some of the things that we're going to be doing in the future. But before we kind of dive into our program, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself with all of us?
Of course, I'd love to. So I'm very much an open book, and that's something that I struggled with, I think, when I was younger, but definitely as I've gotten older, I've really used that as a best practice for myself personally is, you give what you get, and allowing yourself to be vulnerable and open with people, you can create so much more meaningful relationships. And, growing up, I was always very shy and quiet in school, and I always had my little circle, but definitely since I've gotten older and out of the school environment, I definitely feel that I've blossomed, and I've been able to learn and experience so many wonderful things just through being open. And I'm 25 now, so I'm still pretty young, and I still have lots of experience to go through in my life, but that's something that is like my core value is just being true to who you are and, getting as much out of life as you possibly can.
I love that. And you have done so much, though, you were saying you're 25, but you've still done so many things. And that's kind of led you on this journey to where you are today and what you're doing. And I'm excited because you and I chatted before the show. We had talked about the different things that you're doing, the services that you provide, because you are a woman in business, but you are helping people. And that's what I want to dive into today. You have an amazing business that helps people with social media.
Yes. So that is something that I'm extremely passionate about. And, I really have my parents to thank for instilling that entrepreneurial spirit in me from a very, very young age and being so supportive for whatever I chose to do as a career. And, I was a little bit lost after graduating high school of what I wanted to do. And I love animals. And really growing up, the only thing that I could refer to as a job being involved with animals was being a veterinarian. And as I progressed through school, I realized, I didn't really have that academic strength to pursue and be successful at that school. And that was a little hard for me to accept. But when I finally accept that, so many doors open for me, and it was a little overwhelming in a sense because there were so many things to choose from. So I was a little bit lost, and I did, dabble in quite a few different things. At one point, when I first moved out of my parents' house, I was working 4 jobs. I was a server at Earl's, and, I was a receptionist at a spa, as well as I worked at a doggy daycare, and then I also worked for a non-for-profit. And, none of them really lit that spark for me inside. And it got to a point where I kind of had a bit of a breakdown, and I was like, you know what, I need to put my big girl pants on and get a big girl job. And I was kind of unsure where to start, so I just, threw my resume out there, and the first company to phone me was a new home builder, and I worked for them for almost about 4 years, and I learned so much, and starting from very green in sales and customer service and management and all that, and then was able to work my way to, their highest paid assistant, and they even created a role for me. And then it just got to the point where, I lost that spark a little bit. I still loved the social media and the marketing and the sales and, helping people get into a new home. Like, that was always something that I really loved about it. But the politics of it all kind of wore me down. And so I chose to kind of leave that industry. And then I worked for another home builder, and same thing, that spark was faded. So I knew I needed to make a change. And then I ended up going into commercial real estate, and again, same thing, that spark just wasn't quite there. And then I just had a moment where I was like, you know what, I'm such an entrepreneur at heart that I think that's probably one of the reasons why I'm not getting what I'm looking for and what I've worked in roles with. And so it kind of just ignited this idea for me where I wanted to be able to help as many people as possible in their businesses. And I have such strong skills with social media and the technical side of it as well, with building workflows on certain platforms. And there's so many versatile skills that I have that I wanted to be able to offer that to so many different people. And I didn't want to just work for one company doing that. And so that's kind of what sparked my business, which is called Limitless Impact Virtual Management. I started it in December of 2019. And, honestly, I didn't have any expectations at all. I went into it full-heartedly. I took that deep dive in the pool, and I was like, either I'm going to sink or swim, but, I'm going to swim for my life. And sure enough, and a year later, I look at where I'm at now, and I wouldn't change any experience that I went through personally and professionally. I am here today because of everything that I've gone through, and it's made me such a better person. And honestly, it's something that I instill in my business where you can hire a virtual assistant, in the Philippines, for like $5 an hour, but, they just clock in and clock out. They do the task and that's it. They don't have that above and beyond feature where they're looking for other avenues for you to grow your business. And I saw that gap and I wanted to fill it. So that's how I created my business is when you hire me, I'm a team member. I've got your back. If you need a sounding board for ideas that you have that you don't know you should make come to fruition, I'm there and I can give you my advice. And when I see something, trending on social media, for example, that I think that you can do and use to benefit your business, I don't just sit on it. I send it to you. And I'm constantly learning every day and staying on top. Yeah. So it's really evolved into so many great relationships with my clients, and I absolutely love what I'm doing.
Well, one of the things I was going to say that I really found amazing is that you started this at the beginning of our crazy COVID-19. And what a time to start a business but thrive within that business. All the things that you have done and the people that you'll be able to help through this transition. And one of the things we had talked about too earlier, we had mentioned, when we were talking, is that when people are hiring you for your services, and you've got so many great services, they don't have to hire you they can hire you like once a month if they needed you for a few hours here and there. And that's the kind of stuff that for a person that has just starting out, that can't afford a huge bill, I guess you would say, for overhead for, having people come in and help them out, you're able to assist them in a way that doesn't break the bank, basically.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that is a core value for me is that I want to stay affordable for those people. And I took some virtual assistant courses, and they always suggested that you should really niche down your ideal client. And that never really resonated with me, because my ideal client is someone who has that entrepreneurial spirit like I do, and they are wanting to grow their business, and they're not quite at that point where they can afford to hire a full-time employee or even a part-time employee, but they need that support and they need that help from someone that can get them to that point. And ultimately, that's how I've been able to help my clients grow, is being flexible and being able to offer such a variety of different services to help them in any aspect of their business to get them to the point where they can hire employees and, reach their business goals.
And one of the things I like about what you're doing is that your Instagram and all your beautiful posts are just amazing. They're very.
Thank you.
They're just something about them. It's not that they're simple, but it's a clean look to them. They're very professional. They're very easy on the eyes, and it draws your attention. And I think that's really important, because you're wanting to stand out, I think, as a business. A lot of business owners are wanting, what makes me different from everybody else? And what you're doing is that you're helping them brand themselves.
Exactly. And honestly, with any kind of social media platform, there is so much noise. And, I could go into the statistics about how many photos are posted on Instagram in a minute and whatnot. And, I'm a total nerd for all of the analytics and all the data with that. But I know it can be kind of boring for people. But it just comes down to when you show up as your true self and being authentic on social media, it shows. And your audience will grow because of that. Think of any kind of experience that you've had in a sales process. So, if you're going to buy a car, for example, everyone knows, cars salespeople, and I don't mean to, dish on anyone, but they can come across as kind of pushy and, a little slimy. And I find that if you just come from the perspective of, what, I don't really care what anybody thinks, but I'm just going to be true to myself and show up, and I can't control what they think or do. But if I'm just true to myself, that's all that matters.
That is wonderful. I love it. I get excited. I think, I always told you, we should be doing this visual in some aspects, because I have this big grin on my face. And I thought, oh, my goodness, I would love to have had you helping me out through my journey, because it is such a challenge. If any of you are, older like me, it was just okay, I was navigating through the systems, and how is this going to work, and how am I going to draw people in? And that. And you're coming from a generation also that you grew up with this. You're seeing this. You've got the trends. You know what's going on. And I think that's so important for the rest of us to have an understanding, because we think that we can do it all, but we can't. And honestly, It's having individuals like yourself that can assist us that makes all the difference in the world.
That's so true. And, you're right with saying that I grew up with this stuff. I'm kind of right on that cusp where I didn't get my first cell phone until I was 14, I think, where nowadays, I see kids all the time at a very, very young age out in public with a cell phone in their hands. So and honestly, with my age as well, I say all the time that I think I was born in the wrong era. And so I have a respect for the internet and how information is literally at the tip of your fingers. And we have a saying in my family, GTS, and I don't know if I can actually swear on this or not, but it's Google that shit. So whenever we are having a conversation and like arguing about like who is right, it's someone whips out their phone and that information is right there. So it's definitely something that it's in that instant gratification as well. And that's something, I take into account what people are responding to online and figuring out a strategy of how to optimize that for your business so you can get the best results, but still staying true to you as well as what your business message is.
Wow, and I love that. And it's so important because if we don't, our businesses are going to get lost in the shuffle. And I think a lot of people don't want that. Obviously they don't want that. They want to know that their business is still going to be making an impact. But we're doing business so differently. And this year especially, last year, you know what, you probably saw a lot of the changes. And going into 2021, I want to talk about that. And what do you think is going to be happening now?
Yeah, starting my business like right before all this happened was a blessing, honestly. And I was pretty nervous, being in my first year of business. I was concerned that I wouldn't make it. But, I just trusted that I would make it through, and I did. And, a lot of my clients, we had to pivot, and we had to strengthen their online presence. And I offer a service with each of my clients that I onboard, something that's called an online presence audit. And it's kind of like an online background check. And I look at every single social media platform, your website, anything that I can find on you personally as well as professionally. And we clean up your image, more or less. And we optimize all your profiles so we can get your visibility up. And one of the things, especially with going into COVID, there was so much activity online. It was hard to be noticed. So trying to figure out, so reading your analytics and understanding what your audience is engaging with and at what time of the day and what day of the week is so important to be able to be seen. And, everyone complains about the analytics on Instagram and Facebook being so difficult to navigate. And they're not wrong. They really aren't. And they're constantly changing. And I know, you'll see sponsored ads on Facebook from other people in my industry who have a formula that they sell of, if you do 5 Instagram posts and 3 stories and 2 reels and a bunch of commenting and following a day, then you'll get noticed. And they're not wrong, but that's so much work. And I come from the standpoint of, we create a formula that works for you and your business and your time. And then we just implement that. And then we'll slowly get the results. But also, too, I come from the standpoint of I'm not a huge fan of paying to sponsor ads on Instagram or Facebook as well, is because, and this is a tip, once you do it, you can't stop. And it's because the analytics want you to continue paying for sponsors ads so you can get results, which is really unfortunate. But, they're in business to make money just like everyone else, so I understand why. And going into 2021, honestly, with the way that society is now with cancel culture and stuff like that, honestly, the best advice I could recommend is just staying very clear on the message that you want to broadcast on your social media and just doing what feels right to you. And social media can be such a daunting task, and it's very time consuming. And honestly, I find with a lot of my older clients, and I hate saying older because age is just a number, but
we get it.
Yeah, right. And coming into the social media side of things, later into your life and trying to understand, if you're wanting to reach people of my generation, before I make a purchase, I Google them and I'm looking at their Instagram and their Facebook before I even contact them. Everyone my age does that. So, and just making sure that your presence is really strong online. And with everyone shifting to the virtual side of things, I feel like it's definitely going to stay that way for the foreseeable future. I don't think we'll see a shift back to more of the in-person stuff for quite some time, because honestly, being virtual, it's cheaper, because you don't have that overhead cost of having a venue and supplying food and all of that stuff. So, and now that a lot of businesses have made that shift, I think they're just going to run with it for as long as they can.
You know what? I'm going to agree with you there. I have a lot of friends, family in even government jobs that are really transitioning to being at home more because of overhead, because of, other situations. And I think, that's going to be the new norm, as a lot of people are calling it. And a lot of people we're doing different ways of business. And I think people like yourself are going to be in higher demand now, that more people are going to be at home, and they're going to be changing their direction in a lot of ways.
Oh, 100%. And, I've already seen that shift. And there's actually a friend of mine who we're working in a physical office, and now they're at home, and she sold her car. She's just like, I don't need it anymore. My boyfriend has a truck. We don't need to have a second vehicle anymore. And, I'm starting to see that trend where the people are just going to be staying home. And it's easier, to be honest. And the stats are proving it, because people are actually more productive and get more done working from home than in a physical office.
Oh, my goodness, that's crazy, isn't it? And I think that in a lot of ways, well, I would go both ways. They're going to be happier, but in some ways, because you don't have that personal contact, you're not going to be happier.
Yes, and I do agree with that. For me, with working in sales, the majority of my young adulthood in my early 20s, that was the one thing that I missed coming into this and being virtual, was having that, that weekly team sales meeting where you get to catch up with everyone and you kind of get to show off, your sales numbers and whatnot, and that camaraderie and all that. But honestly, once I realized that was an aspect that I felt that I was missing, I went and found it, and I actually joined a BNI group, and it fit that little, it filled in that gap for me. And I'm in my first month of membership with them, but yeah, it's been an amazing experience, and I love the group. It's truly like a little family, and we meet virtually, of course. Hopefully we'll get to go in person again in the near future, but of course that's all dependent. But yeah, it's just having that recognition and, building each other up and supporting each other and meeting that once a week, it gives me that little boost that I needed.
Oh, I love that. And that's going to be definitely a more popular thing. I think we did see that trend quite a bit leading up until this year, a lot of people doing Zoom meetings and so on. Well, I've enjoyed today's program. I want to ask you another thing. There is a cause that's really important to you, and I don't want to end the show until we kind of chat about that.
Yes, of course. So we chatted about this earlier, and, someone who was the greatest role model in my life was my grandfather, and he lived in Nova Scotia. My mom is from Nova Scotia, so that whole side of the family is on that side of Canada, which makes this time very hard because we can't see them because of the Atlantic bubble and whatnot. And, growing up, he gave me so many attributes that I use to this day, and the reason why I'm the person I am today is because of him. And without organ donation, I would not have met him. In the 90s, he had his first heart transplant, and that gave me a grandfather and gave me that role model in my life. Yeah. And then when I was in grade 6, the time came that he needed to have a second transplant. And I'm so grateful for that donor. And I will never, ever forget when that phone call came in. And I was very young. I was only 12, and I remember sitting on the stairs and him standing up against the mantle on the fireplace, and he had this little cell phone that he never used, but he always kept charged because we were always waiting for that phone call. And then that phone finally rang, and everything happened so quickly. And it gave me another 3-4 years with him. And then unfortunately he did pass away in 2009, just before Christmas. And that was absolutely devastating to my family. And it was really hard to work through that grief. But I look at it now, I look back and I think, again, without organ donation and those 2 donors signing their donor card, I wouldn't have a grandfather. So every chance I get, I always try to, inform people that, if God forbid, something were to happen, like a terrible accident, and you were to pass away, like, your death doesn't have to be not meaningful. Like, you can pass on so much more and give life to so many more people. And like, even now with the way that medicine has advanced, you can give someone this gift of sight back and so many different things. So it's definitely something that's very true and dear to my heart.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
Yes. Thank you for giving me the chance to share that.
Yeah, I love it. And, I filled out my card many years ago, so I am definitely a donor. I would be a donor for somebody too. So, well, I want to make a big announcement to all of our listeners today. We are going to be welcoming Brianna as a special guest with us on a monthly basis. Brianna is going to be having a tip day that she's going to be sharing a whole bunch of tips and tools to help you with your social media and your businesses online. So I'm excited to share that with everybody, Brianna.
I am so excited. And honestly, now looking at where I am, I'm like, the truest thing for me is just sharing my knowledge and helping as many other business owners as I can. So this is definitely an amazing opportunity to be able to do that.
So much. I'm excited. We can't wait to hear what you're going to be sharing with us. So I will be posting all that information on all of our social medias as we get closer to those dates. So you guys stay tuned for that. Well, Brianna, thank you so much for being my amazing guest today. I appreciate it. I learned so much. I took a lot of notes today, so I know that our listeners also probably took a lot of notes too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Awesome. Well, and a big shout out to all of our amazing listeners that have taken the time to listen to Brianna. I know that you've learned a lot from her like I have. Make sure that you check her out on all of her social media. I will be posting that on ours also because I want to make sure that everybody is able to check out her beautiful website. It is absolutely fantastic. And maybe get a hold of her, connect with her. I'm sure that she'll be able to help you with all of your businesses. All right, until next time, everybody, I hope that you have a fantastic day and that you do something kind for somebody out there. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks for listening. This show was brought to you by Divas That Care. Connect with us on Facebook, on Instagram, and of course on divasthatcare.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss a thing.